Hey, and welcome back. This is lecture number 3. In the previous lecture, we just briefly went over we did a brief introduction to emotional intelligence, and that was actually a speech I gave a couple of years ago. And although some of the information in that particular lecture was a little different than some of the information we're going to be here, some of the primary information in regards to the definitions used to explain emotional intelligence is going to be the same, some of that core information. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a brief overview of emotional intelligence. Now, in this particular lecture, we're going to be going over the 4 main brain areas, and I wanted to kind of touch on these because throughout the course, we're going to be going over or mentioning some of the main brain areas, and although the circuitry for emotional intelligence is a little different than the main areas of the brain we're going to be covering, because we are going to be talking about some of the main brain areas throughout the course. For people who don't have an overview or have a definition of the brain areas, you can get that from this lecture here. And also, I just also wanted to go over some of the cognitive disorders of the main brain areas. And I really believe in this particular lecture that some of us will have a deeper understanding of what's going on behind the scenes when we say a person is hallucinating, or somebody has lack of coordination, or somebody's they're poor planners, and all this stuff is going to be based off of some of the science and research that's been done on the certain different brain areas. So here's a brief overview or quick look at the human brain. As you can see up there, the parietal lobe is up top. The occipital lobe is at the back of the brain. The temporal lobe is closer towards the base, and the base of the brain is where the limbic system is, and we're going to be talking about the limbic system and the amygdala and certain other emotional brain areas. And then also we have the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is it's been identified as the executive center of the brain, and as you can see, that's the biggest part of the brain. As humans, we have the biggest parts. We have the biggest frontal lobes comparable to some of the other primates that are out there. So for the occipital lobe, that deals with visual reception, visual spatial processing. So that's identifying the different objects in your environment, and also movement and color recognition as well. And then the parietal lobe deals with certain aspects of hearing, language, attention, and then also spatial cognition. And then we have the temporal lobe, which is the auditory and visual, and the language, and also some aspects of hearing and speech. So whenever we hear a sound, it goes directly into the ear canal and goes to through a circuitry and ends up at the temporal lobe. And then also we have the frontal lobe, which deals with attention control, abstract thinking, behavior, physical reaction. So whenever we experience an emotion such as anger, depending how well tuned our frontal lobe is, will be determined, will be an effect of how we take any action. And also our personality is also stored in the frontal lobe. So just a few cognitive disorders of the different areas of the brain. For the occipital lobe, there's hallucinations. People who have been diagnosed as clinically blind also have disorders or disruptions in the occipital lobe, and then also seeing color or motion becomes more difficult, and then also synesthesia. Then we have cognitive disorders of the parietal lobe. It's inability to locate objects, also difficulty in discriminating between sensory information, and then also disoriented. So some people who say that they're disoriented, or some people who are tripping over. So using an example, somebody who has lack of coordination after, I don't know, a hangover, you go out drinking the night before and you wake up, and then if you're all disoriented and then coordination is off, you can be sure that there's been some damage or some type of disruption in the parietal lobe. And then disorders of the temporal lobe is difficulty in understanding speech. So when somebody's talking, although you're hearing the words, the understanding of what those words mean become more challenging. Persistent talkers may, depending on how severe they're talking, could be a cognitive disorder of the temporal lobe. And then also long and short-term memory loss, and that's because the temporal lobe is close or located to the hippocampus, and the hippocampus is the part of the brain that deals with memory, and then also some other disorders as increase or decrease in sexual behavior and also aggression. And then some of the cognitive disorders of the frontal lobe is short attention span, poor working memory, short-term memory is also inhibited. Now, with the poor working memory, all that means is that the working memory is the amount of information we can hold at any given moment. And so the ability to hold that type of information in the frontal lobe is inhibited when the frontal lobe is not intact. And also difficulty in planning and reasoning. And mainly because when Antonio Damasio, neuroscientist, had said that whenever we're making a decision, we have to attach some type of feeling or some type of emotion to that decision that we're making. So in a sense, it's not the fact that people with frontal lobe disruptions can't plan. It's more so the fact that they can attach any feelings to the plan, so they don't know which one is best. And if we don't attach a feeling to any type of decision, then we're not going to make the decision. Okay, so that covers it for lecture number 3. In lecture number 4, we're going to be looking at emotional intelligence.